Welcome back to oh my gosh, I almost said Reviving Christian Families. That is not the podcast name anymore. Welcome back to the United Christian Marriage Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Oh my gosh, you guys, I feel so blessed. I just want to give this praise report before we jump in to this juicy episode and say that I had a humongous jump in my downloads all of a sudden. Like, I wish I had the numbers pulled up for you right now. I was looking at them a few minutes ago, and I was like, holy camole, you guys. More people are seeing the show. That is such a blessing. So if you could just do your part in spreading that even further and leave a review if you have not already, that would mean the world to me. I will absolutely 100% be reading through every single one. And if I can, and I know you guys, whether you're in the Facebook group, on my email list, I will pop you a thank you if I'm able to. So oh my gosh, you guys, this is such a blessing. Please continue to share the show and leave a review, and that will make a huge difference in making sure that we are getting this message to more Christian marriages. Oh my gosh, guys, this is not just about marriage. I just want to remind you guys that we're focusing on the marriage because healthy marriages create healthy homes, and healthy homes change generations within a family line. So it all starts with marriage. This is such important work. All right, now let's dive in, guys. Hey, wives, I see you. I know the pressure you're carrying, the pressure to be the perfect wife, the devoted mother, the woman who keeps it all together. You're told to be soft, feminine, and gentle, yet also strong, capable, and a provider. The world pulls you in 100 directions, stretching you thin, leaving you exhausted, and wondering if you're enough. But I need you to hear this. God has more for you, more for your marriage, more for your motherhood, more for the legacy you are building. You are not meant to do this on your own strength, so press in, do the work, and trust that something greater is coming. You may have noticed I'm trying out a new intro, so hopefully you guys liked that. The old intro is still going to be there, but I'm going to use that one for episodes that Levi comes on, because I'm really going to start just talking to the wives when it's just me. That's what I felt convicted by the Lord to do, is if it's a solo episode, I'm going to talk to you wives, and then I'm going to bring my husband on more so we can, have those episodes where I can still be like, wives, okay, go grab your husband. Like, we're going to talk together. And that way you guys get the best of both worlds. Okay, I'm so excited. Let's dive into this episode. Today we are talking about if it's possible to actually heal your marriage with just one spouse working on the marriage, or if it actually requires both spouses. Now, I know this may be like one of those controversial topics when it comes to marriage, because I've actually heard both sides. And if you haven't heard both sides, then you may just be like wherever you're at and like think, duh, common sense, the way that I'm thinking is the only logical way to think. But let me open your mind here. So I personally have always fallen into the category of like believing that it takes two. But recently, and as I, started as a wife trying to work on my marriage, after we got married and went through a lot of hard things back to back, I realized that my husband didn't have the energy to work on the marriage the way that I did, because he was off at work or he was injured. And so during those periods of time, I had more time to actually work on things and dive into things. And so I started to do that and just kind of got curious about, is there a way that I can work on my marriage, just me? And there was moments where I was so frustrated. Like, for example, there was a time where I bought me and my husband both these prayer journals. It's like 31 days or 30 days, something like that, of prayers for your husband, and then 30 days of prayers for your wife. So they were like the exact same book, but they had prayers that were specific for the husband or the wife to pray over, their spouse. So I got these books and I was doing mine not perfectly, not every day. I was kind of sporadic, but I was doing it and I was praying for my husband and I was pouring the time into it and I was reading their prayers and journaling my own, going through the book. And it was amazing. And yet I kept trying to push my husband to do it in his book for praying for me, and I could not get him to open that thing up. He just kept telling me, "Oh, well, I don't work well like that. I can't do these sort of things." Like he was telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, stop making excuses. Like I was getting so frustrated, and I tried communicating in different ways, telling him that like it made me sad or it hurt my feelings that he wasn't praying for me or that he didn't like use the book. And so he had tried to do it here or there, but it just didn't stick. And now looking back, and so sorry if you can hear my kids screaming in the background. I don't usually record episodes while they're awake, but today was just a crazy morning. So sorry about that. Anyways, so looking back, I think that there's some things that I definitely could have done better. And that's not what this episode's about, so maybe we'll dive into that a different time. But I wanted to give you guys that story because I think that there's so many ways that we as wives can relate to this in different areas of our marriage. We tend to like have these expectations that aren't always well communicated, and then when our husband falls short of that, we feel frustrated. And if we are not clearly communicating things in a calm and gentle, nice manner, then we end up like snapping or exploding and saying things the wrong way at the wrong time, in the wrong context, with the wrong words, all the wrongs. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about today, but let's just stay on track here. Sorry, I'm deviating. Okay, guys, so the question that we're trying to answer today, is it possible for the marriage to be healed by one spouse only? And my take on this now, after almost a few years of marriage and after, really investing into both sides, like trying to get my husband on board and then having to go out on my own and do things by myself. And then now he's gotten to a point where he's more involved. And so I've kind of seen the different seasons of this. And this is my take on it, guys. I think absolutely you as the wife can 100% start healing your marriage without your husband's involvement. But I do think there's a cap in how far you can get with that. Because the husband eventually needs to be involved if you are going to have a unified marriage. Like, I mean, teamwork all the way. Like, we are one. We are one, all caps. Because that is what the Bible calls us to. The Bible calls the two to become one. And that is not just a physical reference. I'm not going to say the word because I don't know if your kids are around when you're listening to this, but I think we all know what I'm referencing. It's not just a physical reference of two becoming one, but it's also a spiritual reference. And so when we think about that and like, what does that actually mean? We need to be thinking as one with one mission and one goal in mind. This big picture look is like we both should be focused on Christ and what Christ has put on our hearts over our marriage and our family and what he's calling us to. And so if you haven't taken the time to figure that out, that's a great place to start. But again, that's for another episode. Okay, so this could be simple, guys. This can be simple, intentional changes on your end as the wife, and those changes can lead to very powerful natural shifts in the marriage with no immediate effort needed from the husband. And that's because the wife actually has a lot of power in a relationship. I mean, you really do. You get to set the tone for your home. And so when we operate well within our role as the wife and we don't try to take over our husband's role, then we have more energy and effort to really give into our role. That means that we can actually focus on how we are showing up as the wife and as the mother and as the homemaker. And so even if you have a job or you work from home or you work outside of the home, either way, you can still try to shift out of some of those masculine mindsets or more like masculine sides that we can get sucked into of trying to like do the things for our husband because we think he's not doing them well enough. And then once we pull back from that, then we can really start doing our job well, and we can say things calmer. We can think clearer. Like the whole goal here, guys, it all starts with clear communication, if we're being honest. Okay, now I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, I just want you guys to know that as wives, you have a very powerful impact on your marriage. And if you focus on your own growth and actions and you improve yourself through communication, boundaries, showing grace, all those things, those efforts will often inspire a positive change in your husband very quickly. So don't ever feel like you are stuck or you don't have power in your marriage, because you do. You have even more power than your husband, I would dare to say. Now, if you want to read more about this and understand this more, I would recommend the book, The Empowered Wife. I have not finished it yet. I will probably have finished it by the time that this episode goes live. And I will probably be doing a actual episode just talking about the book and giving a review. But so far what I've read, there is some things that seem maybe a little more secular in there than I would enjoy. But overall, I think there is a lot of biblical messages, a lot of good messages for a wife. And so if you have some spiritual discernment, I really recommend this book. I think that overall it's a really good read, and that it could definitely, sorry for my stutter there, definitely improve your marriage. Okay, so now let's get into the 3 simple changes that wives can make today. Change number 1, shift your communication. You need to understand that if you, first, before you can communicate clearly, you have to understand your own feelings. So whatever you need to do that, do it. Whether that's journaling, praying, I really recommend doing one of those things before you even talk to your husband about it. That might be talking to a friend, voice memoing yourself in your phone, like, I don't know. Whatever it is for you, pick something and stick with it. So first you need to understand what you're even trying to communicate. What are you feeling? What are you wanting? What are your desires? What do you think would make you feel more joy? And what are you grateful for? And then once you understand those things, then you can go to your husband and you can communicate those clearly in a way that is empathetic towards him and towards yourself, right? We should never be thinking about just one or the other. You shouldn't just be thinking about your husband, because if you neglect your own needs, then that will affect your husband, right? Because you guys are one. And you shouldn't just think about yourself, because if you just think about yourself and you neglect your husband's needs, then that will also negatively affect you. You have to have both sides of this unit, the marriage makes you one, but there's 2 sides to it, right? You are 2 different people. You have 2 different roles and 2 different ways of thinking and 2 different strengths and 2 different weaknesses. So there are differences within the one, but the goal is to have both halves of the one in mind. And when you do that, and when you clearly communicate in that way, your marriage will change for the better 100%. And if you want to see an example of how I coach on this type of stuff, you have to you have to listen to the last episode that I did, which was live coaching that I recorded for you guys from a coaching call. It was the whole coaching call. I recorded it and you can listen to it. It's literally amazing, guys. I don't know if I'll ever record a whole coaching session like that again, because when I was posting, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I feel like I should be charging for this, but it's free. So go and listen. And I am 100% positive that you will get something out of it that will be very powerful for your marriage. So go and listen to that, especially if you're like, I don't even really know what coaching is. What the heck are you talking about? Just go listen to it. Okay. Now, change number 2. Here I put lead with grace and patience, and while that's important, 100%, and I think you should go into the conversation or into any part of your marriage with the understanding that things are not always going to happen on your timeline, and it takes 2 to tango, my friends. Like, you have to work with your husband. You do have to give him grace. That's not exactly where I decided I wanted to go with this point, because I realized that yes, that's what's behind what needs to be done, but what do you really need to do that? And here's the secret, guys. You need to show up with gratefulness in your marriage. And we talk about gratitude a lot because it is a huge tool, especially when you're dealing with mental health issues. But why I'm bringing it up here is because when you show up and you tell your husband what he is doing well, he will naturally want to please you more. But we as wives, when we get into a nagging attitude or we feel like we need to point things out that he's doing wrong so that he can learn, quote unquote, what we are doing is just discouraging him and teaching him that we are unpleasable. And then he stops trying to please us. But if we come into the marriage with the attitude of gratefulness that we need to show him everything he's doing well, even if it's the littlest thing, not only will it change our mindset and make us more joyful and us more gracious and grateful and encouraged in our marriage, but it will have that effect on him too. And it will make him see that you are pleasable. And men naturally like making their wives happy. They want to do more to make you happy. It's like a reward when you tell him, oh, I loved that you did blank. He will naturally seek out more ways to please you. And if you're doing tip 1 and you're clearly communicating what you need and want, then he will know what to do to please you. It's a powerful tool. I highly encourage that you go and you use this. Okay, now change 3. Set healthy boundaries. Now, when I say set healthy boundaries, I do not mean that you need to overpower your husband in any way. You should 100% be letting him lead, even if you feel like he doesn't lead well. Again, this goes back to doing an excellent job in your role instead of trying to take on someone else's role and then forfeiting the excellent job you could be doing in your own role. So focus on your wife as the role, your role as the wife, and let him lead in things, even if you feel like he won't do it well. And if you're doing step 1 and 2, he will start doing it well. But even if you think he won't, just try it, give it a couple months, see what happens. And of course, be praying for him through that process. Now, what I mean by setting healthy boundaries is that if something is triggering for you, in regards to your childhood or past traumas or even past things in your marriage, you need to clearly communicate that with your husband and set the boundary of letting him know, when you do this, I feel this. When you do this, I feel triggered. When you do this, these sorts of thoughts and emotions come up for me. And again, this all goes back to knowing yourself. If you're not taking the time to know yourself and get to the root of why these things are happening, then you're not going to know how to show up, you're not going to know how to communicate, and you're not going to know what boundaries need to be in place. And these healthy boundaries can also look like schedules or systems or routines within the home that give you a structure so that you're not constantly reinventing the wheel and trying to come up with new things. Now, there's 2 people I recommend for learning that sort of thing who I've personally learned from and really enjoyed their teaching. And that is Cayenne Molina. She teaches Simple Rhythms for Busy Moms. And Chelsea Joe, who teaches Systemize Your Life. And she also has Systemize Your Business, which she just put into a group coaching form called Systemize to Scale. Both of them are amazing, and I recommend that if you're looking for someone to teach on those sorts of things. Okay. Now, what I want to say is that, yes, you absolutely can change your marriage by doing these things alone as the wife, but eventually you are going to want to really become one with your husband, and you may want to go further beyond just those things that we talked about the wife can do. And so true long-term healing and unity does require effort from both spouses. Now, again, if you're doing your role well, it will inspire your husband to do his role well. But healing is about restoring partnership and covenant, and it truly takes both of you to thrive. So this is why I'm creating my group coaching program. It may launch as not a group form and then turn into a group form. I have not launched it yet. But if you're listening to this in the future, it's probably already launched. So hopefully I'll have the link in here below. But essentially, that's why I'm creating this program, so that couples can learn to coach each other and coach themselves, and also be able to pass those tools on to your kids, because that's important, right? If you know how to coach each other and you know how to coach yourself, then you're like double protected, because you can coach yourself before you even go talk to your husband. And then you have greater awareness when you have the conversation with your husband. And then if something falls through the cracks or you're having a hard day, you're just ranting, your husband knows how to coach you if he sees that something is bothering you, or your mindset's a little off, or your hormones are a little out of whack and you need extra care. He knows how to show up for you in that moment. And then you have all these tools that you can teach and pass down to your children, so then it affects them in a positive way. Not only will they see your marriage get healthier, but now they will have the tools to know how to be healthy themselves and one day be a healthy spouse to someone else. And then they can pass that on to your grandchildren and so on and so forth. So this is really a way bigger effect than we even typically imagine. The importance of learning these coaching skills is that it makes what you just learned today sustainable long term. It makes it so that if you're having a hard season or a hard day, you have a framework you can always go to and lean on. And that's why I'm really passionate about teaching these coaching skills to couples together, so that you are double, triple, quadruple protected in your marriage and in the way you communicate and in the way you think. This is bigger than just saving a marriage to the bare minimum. This is how we create thriving marriages and thriving families. I'm so excited that you guys are working on your marriage and that you tuned into this episode today. And I just want to give you encouragement that really small shifts can make a huge difference. And if that's where you're starting, that is okay. And that is amazing, honestly. That is such a blessed place to be in, because there's so much that the Lord can pour into you in that season. And I know you're going to see huge changes in the way that the Lord works in your heart and your mind. And I'm just so excited for you guys, because truly it is an awesome place to be in. Now, wives, I encourage you to take the first steps to write down one thing you want to do today. And if you don't know, if you're like, wow, that was a lot, maybe listen again and take notes. But if you just want one tangible thing that you can do today, what I want you to do is to think and journal very clearly about what you are feeling, what you are thinking, and what you want in your life. What do you feel like is lacking? And then I want you to find the time that your husband will have the most energy and availability to really listen to you. And I want you to intentionally mark it on your calendar for when you are going to have this intentional conversation with him. And I want you to do it today. Not that you need to have the conversation today, but you need to put it on your calendar today. Okay, guys. Now, if you really want help with this, if you want my one-to-one support, then please book a free coaching call. I'm only doing so many of these free coaching calls, so I really encourage you to snatch one up while they are available. The link will be in the show notes. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I just want to remind you that you are capable of improving your marriage, and healthy marriages create healthy homes, and healthy homes change generations. I love you. I'm rooting for your marriage transformation, and I am praying for you. Have a blessed day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got so much value out of it. And if you loved this episode, could you do me a quick favor and click 5 stars and leave me a review? It would do wonders for spreading the podcast out to other people who need it, and it only takes a few seconds. If you have an additional few seconds, why don't you go ahead and screenshot the episode and share it to your stories so we can spread the message and get more families healed. Thank you, and until next time, I will be praying for you, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye.